Busy night in the world of weather across the United States. We have a powerful storm that is producing severe weather, heavy rain, and strong winds across much of the southern plains, the Mississippi Valley, and eventually moving across the south and into the southeast and even up into the Tennessee Valley. We have winter storm watches and winter weather advisories up all over the place in upstate, well, up into upstate New York and in New England. Also back around the Great Lakes. A new winter storm on the way in the west, and watches are up there. And we've got a blocky pattern setting up. All of that and more on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show, which of course is always brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, tri-state area. They've got mulch, topsoil, sand, and if we get another winter storm, salt. They are there for you, and their telephone number is 631-756-1125. The best prices anywhere, and only Joe Rayo knows that the website is...
Well, if only I know, then nobody's going to... No, I know it, and I'm going to reveal it to all of you. It is OmniTrueValue.com.
It is.
Ta-da!
It certainly is. And welcome, everybody. Whoops. Hang on. That's the Facebook page. Hang on a second. I got to switch it over so that we could see Joe's beautiful hair and his outfit for tonight on this Thursday night.
Want to see what my outfit is? This is a sweater. This is a sweater that is left over from my News 12 days. News 12, many years ago when they came up with traffic and weather on Channel 61, those of you who have Optimum, they called it Metro Traffic and Weather, and everybody who had a hand in it were given these lovely pullover sweaters. And I still have this to this very day. It's very comfortable. I like it, even though Metro Traffic and Weather doesn't exist anymore, but I still have the sweater. And in fact, come to think of it, the Traffic and Weather Channel, which we all knew and loved, doesn't exist anymore either. So you might as well just forget about the whole thing over there. Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Very, very funny. And I have to share this with you off the top of the show. When I did my accumulation forecast for the storm tomorrow,
Okay.
I said on this is on Facebook now. I said any early sun fades behind increasing thickening clouds. Snow, sleet, rain developing by late afternoon. High 39 to 49, and then wintry mix changes to plain rain tomorrow night. Accumulation forecast. This was I didn't even draw a map. I just wrote this down because I figured this would be easy for everybody to comprehend. You're laughing now. Wait until you hear this.
Go on.
Interstate 287, I-287, north to I-84, slush coating to 1 inch. North of Interstate 84, 1 to 4 inches. Highest accumulations will be found in the high terrain areas above 800 feet. I got a comment from somebody after reading this. I won't mention the guy's name, but he writes, "Hi, Joe. What about south of accumulation south of I-287? Thank you." And I wrote back to the guy and I said, honestly, you couldn't figure that out for yourself?
Oh, I'm so proud of you. That's exactly the correct answer.
I'm saying a coating to 1 inch north of 287. The guy says, "Well, what about south of 287?" And I said, "You couldn't figure that out for yourself? What south of 287 means?"
Yeah, you know, I love when you break it down, and then they'll come and they'll ask you, "Well, what about Pleasantville?
Yes.
Well, what about it? It's a crappy place. I don't want to be there." You know. It isn't. I know it isn't. I'm just, I was trying to come up with some fake sounding city name so that I wouldn't offend anybody.
Suckabone Corners, and there is actually a place in Westchester called Suckabone Corners. I put that on my map on News 12 one night. Janine Rose, my news director, calls me in after the show. Joe, don't put that place on the map anymore. I said, it's a valid place, Janine. It's a I know, Joe, but just don't put it on anymore. So some places in Westchester were off limits. So anyway.
Believe me when I tell you, over the years, when I never respond to any of those. I do not zip code forecast. Okay? Not unless you're paying me a ton of money. I am not zip code forecasting for, especially because you've just, you go through all this trouble. If you don't know where you are on a map, okay, you have an issue that neither of us can solve. All right.
Exactly.
It requires opening a book every once in a while, maybe opening up a map every once in a while. It's too funny. It's too funny. Welcome tonight to everybody on the chat board. Welcome to those of you lurking in the background. I actually got a message today from somebody who admitted that they lurk in the background of the Joe and Joe Weather Show.
Oh, they all lurk.
Yes, they do. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you can lurk every day on the Joe behind the scenes on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, or you could join the folks on the chat board. Just hit that subscribe button, and you'll find that we are on Monday through Thursday at 7:35, Sundays at 11 a.m. unless something happens and then we have to reschedule, which we'll tell you ahead of time. And of course, if you subscribe, you'll get and turn your notifications on. You will get notified every time Joe and I come on. Although I will say that I sometimes get, because I subscribe to my own channel, I sometimes get the notification the next day. I don't control the notifications. That's a YouTube thing, and as I understand it, they've got so many YouTube channels and so many subscribers on these YouTube channels that their systems can't handle sending out notifications to each and every one. So they've got some algorithm, I guess, that figures out who gets them and when they get them. So anyway, so much for that. So I'm going to make a general weather statement. Joe, you are in charge tonight of Super Chat, okay? And you
yes,
let everybody know because we have two Super Chat.
Anthony Spiraccio and Raymond O'Hara have kicked off the Super Chat ball tonight.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you. I'm going to say this, and for those of you watching, those of you who go on the internet and pull up down weather maps and weather models on Tropical Tidbits, Pivotal Weather, and wherever it is you go, Weather Bell, I'm just going to warn you that, and I think, Joe, you will agree with me, the models are usually volatile in terms of what they do from run to run. They're less volatile in the short range, but once you get past, say, day 6 or 7, they start to get volatile, and then sometimes when you get past day 10 or 11, they get absolutely squirrely. Okay, expect over the next couple of weeks a lot of volatility from run to run. I guarantee you, Joe, there are going to be runs coming up in the next bunch of days where somewhere in that long range there's going to be a bomb of a storm or two, or not, depending on the next run where it'll disappear. I think we're going to see a lot of that. Anytime, I've noticed the last few days. Remember, I showed you that, we talked about the European last night at 240 hours. Okay.
Yes.
With
with
that upper air, it's gone. But then today it did something that also knocked me off my chair at 192, 216, and 240, where it dropped. I don't know if you saw it. It dropped this massive polar vortex into southeastern Canada. I mean, no precip. It's all dry and and very cold air. So cold, Joe, so cold that the 0 degree, the 32 degree, we're talking the Celsius, the 0 degree isotherm at the 850 millibar level, which is at about 5,000 feet. Would you like to take a guess where it was?
Yeah, Jacksonville, Florida.
It was actually further south than that. It was it was almost to Miami. That's how far south it was. I looked at that, and then the other thing is when I looked at that, and then I looked at what the other models were doing. Talk about being totally different. They weren't necessarily opposite. They were just completely different in terms of what the upper air was going to look like. So expect a lot of that to go on in the next couple of weeks while we deal with this big developing block in the North Atlantic, which we would be jumping, winter weather lovers and snow lovers would be jumping up and down big time if this showed up in late December, January, and February. But they come when they come, and we've got it now. So I expect a lot of turbulence ahead.
I noticed that the 540 line is all the way down to about Orlando, Florida, on the Europeans' 234-hour run.
Yes.
And that's like, way, that's like 10 days from now. How much you want to put money down at 10 days from now? That ain't going to be what the situation is down in Orlando, Florida.
I mean, it shows it shows this big blocky pattern, polar air just collapsing down into the eastern half of the U.S. Big sprawling high pressure all over the place. I don't know. We're gonna have a lot of challenges, I think, going forward, weather-wise.
Yep.
And by the way, you please note the recent super chat hit.
Well, I saw Frank Scalera. Thank you, Frank. And oh, thank you, Quiet John.
You could shop the name brands now instead of the store brands.
See, I didn't see Quiet John's contribution because I was on my own screen looking at the European and looking to where the cold air would be and everything else, and it was covering up the chat board. So now I see Quiet John. Wow.
Quiet John, thank you so much. Seriously, thank you very much. That is incredibly generous of you. And we hope that Joe and I can live up to it. All right, so let's have at it. And I drew a map, so I guess we could show it now since precipitation is going to be getting underway. I drew a map yesterday. I have to tell you, if you're in Boston right now and you're a forecaster, you have to be ripping your hair out of your head trying to figure out what to do with regards to snow amounts. So this is what I did, and I admittedly I probably may be a little bit too far south, but the stuff's going to get washed. It's going to get washed away anyhow. So I did this map where I brought the trace line to about New York City and northern New Jersey right along basically Route 80. That there could be some snow in the mix there, okay? And then I drew a 1-inch line at the Putnam south border and a 2-inch line on the Putnam north border. That might be a little too far south, but again, anything south of Poughkeepsie is going to get washed away anyhow.
Wait a minute. You drew the 1-inch line, you said at the Putnam south border?
I think, I think is that the Putnam south border where I have it?
No, that's central Westchester.
Oh, okay. Either way, it's too far south. Now my eyes have shown me I could see now where the Putnam border is.
Well, this is going to be interesting, Joe, because for where I live in Putnam Valley, I'm going for a coating to 1 inch, and for what you're saying,
I have 2.
You have 2.
Yeah. Okay.
You better not. I don't want to roll that damn machine out again.
I did this yesterday, and I hear you. The only thing I did notice that today, the runs today were a little beefier, and they actually did pull the snow lines a shade further to the south. I think the real challenge is going to be in Massachusetts, particularly in Boston, where is it going to be the east wind that's going to change it to rain there, or is it going to be the rapidly developing secondary low, which is what the models were saying. Particularly European actually up until today hadn't really picked up on that too well. Now kind of showing that the secondary is going to wrap up fairly quickly. Either that or it's just a plain old center jump from the primary low in Ohio, because the primary low is gone uh, by the time in 6 hours it completely disappears. So I think it's a struggle for those areas to figure out just exactly what you're going to get. Uh, I may be too high in the south. I may also be too low in the north. So again, this was my early call yesterday. I didn't draw a final call because I figured I'll wait till tomorrow. So it's going to change. This is going to change. But that was my logic behind what I did in my forecast yesterday.
Off the top of my head right now for Boston. Now, Boston, you could have, maybe an inch or two literally down by the water. And you go to north and especially west of Boston inland, and they could pick up a quickie 5-6 inches. So it's a tough call for Boston. Yeah.
So here's actually, we might as well take a look and see. We can show you what Boston did. The Weather Service office in Boston, Massachusetts did, and here you go. So let me open this up in a separate window. Oh God, come on, don't do that to me. There we go. So they got 1 to 2 in Boston itself, but then the amounts rapidly go higher. It's not a lot of distance between Boston's 1 to 2 and then getting into that yellow zone, which is 6 to 8, like in Worcester, and up at Fitchburg is 8 to 12, and Greenfield is like right on the edge of 8 to 12. So you see the southern part of the state at 3 to 4. It's a real tough call. It's a very, very tough call. And then you look at the GFS, which has got all this dark blue snow there and puts down 1.5 feet. I mean, I couldn't in my right mind go anywhere close to what those numbers were, but this is one of those areas that it could wind up with a far more bullish outcome. By the way, I know some people don't own bullish means up. Okay, when the stock market is going up, it's in a bull market. That's said to be bullish. When there's news that moves the prices higher, it's bullish. When things go lower, if we were lowering numbers, we would say that we were bearish on a big snowfall. So this is going to be pretty interesting to see what happens in Connecticut. Basically north of Route 84, then starts to corner off, and you go into the northeastern part of the state. That's where you have some 3 to 4 inch amounts, 2 to 3 inches in the middle, 1 to 2 on to the south, and then south of 15, it's probably just a coating to an inch. At least this is according to the National Weather Service office in Boston, Massachusetts.
See now, Boston on the North American model, they've got. Let's see, this is like two.
The NAM brings warm air all the way up to I-90.
Right. I mean, they've got like at 2:00 in the morning on Saturday morning, 543 thickness, and then they go by 7 a.m. on Saturday morning, 546. So the upper levels are really warming up. The low levels stay cold though. T1 of +1 Celsius at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. It drops back to 0 at 1 a.m. and then by 7 a.m. it's +3. You look at that. Just like if you were relying your weather just on the 18Z NAM run, you'd say for Boston, all right, wintry mix, maybe more sleet than snow, and maybe some rain mixed, blah 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 blah. You're right though. They really push the warm air.
Yeah, I mean, I have the NAM up on the screen now. I mean, if the NAM was right, Joe, it wouldn't even start. It wouldn't start as snow clear up to Albany. I mean, it's got sleet there.
Right.
It never even has any blue snow, and I think the reason why is the primary the primary Saturday morning is still there. It's still up there near over Lake Ontario, and the secondary low is sitting over western Long Island. And that's what maybe the NAM is. At the end, the NAM is the only one of these models. If we look at the GFS, if you look at the European, I mean, the primary's all but gone here. There's a closed isobar in northwest PA there. That's it. The low is actually south of Riverhead out in the Atlantic, and you can see the GFS has got all that dark blue snow Saturday morning in Massachusetts, and even into Saturday afternoon, it still has some moderate snow falling, and even some light snow by evening. So that's that model, and the European, which again up until today wasn't anything to write home about, suddenly got beefier because here too the European by Saturday morning, Joe, the primary's gone. So it's a very, very tough forecast for that part of New England.
It is, and it's interesting also that we based a lot of the heavy-duty precip with the last system, Monday night, Tuesday morning, on the F-Gen, the line at 700 millibar of atmospheric energy that was coming through around 7 o'clock in the evening and shortly thereafter, and that's where we picked up the to use your words, Joe, the bullish or most bullish amount of precipitation, and basically they're doing it again.
Yeah,
the models are showing that that area is going to be moving through after 7 o'clock tomorrow night, and it's very progressive, and it continues to move on up into upstate New York and New England by the time we get to the wee hours of the morning on Saturday.
Look at I just noticed something, but look, this is the Europeans F-Gen. So F-Gen is front of Genesis, folks. So when you see this, something like this, it's showing development. It's showing forcing, it's showing development, and this is where it is at 7 o'clock in the evening on Friday. And as we go into the overnight hours, take a look at this. Here, this is the F-Gen at 6Z, which is 1 a.m. Look what happens, Joe. I'm going to now flip the switch and go to the next one, which is at 3 hours later. All of a sudden, there's this big area there, and actually it almost looks like it went backwards. That's probably that's probably reflecting that secondary that's developing.
Right. And don't rule out the possibility that there could be some convection. There could be some thunderstorms rumbling about associated with that. I know that the Storm Prediction Center does not have any thunderstorm activity reaching our area. They're keeping most of the stuff to the south. That still doesn't mean, though, that you can get a few peals of thunder, some flashes of lightning as this thing starts coming together Friday night late.
Yeah, Jay's Boston Emergency Responses notes that at his house, Andover, Mass, where, excuse me, Andover, Massachusetts, where, by the way, you can send your tax return to, they're forecasting 6 to 8 for Andover. So tomorrow, I'm going to be pretty. I got some snow removal. I have one snow removal person in the Boston area that I work with, and I know Arthur's watching the show. He's a big fan of the show. Hi, Arthur. Hope you're having a nice cigar tonight and a good stiff drink ahead of all of this. This is not going to be easy. This is not going to be easy.
No, it's not. It's not. Well, I'm glad you're the one who's going to be the forecaster responsible for this. There's going to be a little headache coming your way. What did you once say to me during not an exact situation, but a very critical and very difficult situation to ferret out or whatever? And you said it's times like these that I almost wish I could take a nail and hammer it through my head or something.
Yes.
Or put an ice pick through my head or something.
Exactly.
We have a request from Sammy Presley, maybe not immediate, or maybe immediate. I don't know. You're more or less in control here. He would like to see the radar of Texas. Please.
Yeah, no problem. We'll do that. Let me run through the watches and warnings. There's a ton of them tonight. And then we'll do SPC after this, and then I'll bring up the radar. All right, so we have, among other things, we have winter storm warnings up north of I-90, up the Northway in northern New York, and just about all of Vermont. We have winter storm watches that are up for northern Massachusetts and New Hampshire and into Maine. There's advisories and a couple of winter storm warnings up in Maine at the moment, and that's because there's this lead system today that still hasn't quite exited yet, but it's about to. I believe, again, because my eyes, I have such a difficult time discerning. Good, I was right. Discerning colors. Winter storm watches for the southern half of Michigan, northern Indiana, northeastern Illinois, and I think that includes Chicago. But let me just make sure. Yes, it does include Chicago. And we've got flood watches in northwestern Ohio. Huge area of wind advisories from the Appalachians down to Georgia, going all the way west across the Gulf states and in and across Texas. High wind warnings up in Tennessee, northern Alabama, Mississippi, southern Kentucky, and small portion of southwestern West Virginia. High wind warnings also in southwest Texas and into southeastern New Mexico. That we've now gone once again. I wonder, have they? When was the last time that they have been without a winter storm warning or a winter storm watch? Because they had winter storm, they had blizzard warnings, they had winter storm warnings that went to blizzard warnings. And then for blizzard warnings, they went to winter storm watches for this next event in the Sierra Nevada. Then they got winter storm warnings up there, and winter storm warnings up in northeastern California, up the coastal range into Oregon. So another crazy night, round of weather. Another crazy round of weather about to get underway in the western part of the U.S. Now let's go to SPC because we have a really busy night. We have a regional severe weather outbreak going on. So let's take a look. And of course, this is all being reflected by this moderate risk of severe weather that SPC put up yesterday. And there is a tornado. It looks like there's 2 tornado watches that are up. One in in central Texas, going all the way up into northeast Texas. And the other one extending into Arkansas and northwest Louisiana. That is for tonight. Now, as Joe, you and I both know how SPC is glued to our show. For 2 days, we've been. We love you. They would be put up. They put up an enhanced, and they did, but they didn't put it up over me. They put it up in all seriousness. No, the enhanced area also includes Nashville, and as I recall, they had a pretty devastating tornado event in the not too distant past. So I'm sure they're probably on tender hooks with this. Enhanced risk of severe weather in that portion of north central Tennessee into central Kentucky, a pretty large area of slight risk that covers a whole bunch of states, marginal risk that goes from Virginia down to South Georgia and across the Florida Panhandle into Mississippi. The tornado risk for tomorrow is 5%. I should have showed this before. Just go back to today's map. The tornado risk tonight is at 10%.
Wow, almost the whole state of Kentucky is in that for tomorrow. That area.
Tomorrow, yeah. Tonight it's northeast Texas into Arkansas, and they got a second hatched area, and I can't see on the legend what that means. Inside that tornado watch, you see that, or maybe I have the wrong.
No, I see it. I see it.
Yeah, that's a tornado watch. I wonder why they have that dark black line in there, if that means anything. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, it's on the wind map too. So SIG, significant. This is wind gusts, wind probability. So a 45%. I still don't get what that black line's supposed to mean. So okay, well, let's just leave it be. So that's for tonight. Now, as we said, here's again for tomorrow, and then we go to the next day. which is Saturday, and hardly a thunderstorm except in northern Florida, north central Florida as well. Just general thunderstorm activity being indicated, and I don't think they had anything. I doubt they're going to have anything in the long range. So let's see. Potential too low, potential too low, predictability too low, predictability too low, potential too low. So maybe 2 days next week in some places they might be not be seeing a marginal risk. Okay, let's get to the radar, and I'm going to give it a quick refresh, and we'll go right to Texas, and you can see. Are
there enough severe thunderstorm watches for you in Texas
warnings
right now?
These are all warnings.
Warnings.
1, 2,
warnings.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then there's one on the Oklahoma-Arkansas border. I noticed a couple of tornado warnings earlier. I'm not seeing them now. I will. Let's bring up a couple of. I'm going to bring up a couple of radars from down there. See, Sammy, you ask and you shall receive, and you're getting it. So there you go. Here's. Look at this. This is. This is the Weather Service office in, well, everybody knows it is Dallas-Fort Worth, but here they call it Fort Worth, Dallas. Now there's got to be a story behind that. I have to find that out.
Well, is Fort Worth further to the west of Dallas? Maybe did that play into this here? Maybe that might be it.
I could very well be, but
Fort Worth gets it before Dallas.
Yeah, very. Yeah. Then tomorrow they'll switch it around back to Dallas, Fort Worth. That's a pretty impressive line of storms. Oh, we got a tornado warning. You see, it just popped up right there. There's the red box.
Yeah.
Let's see where that is. That is okay. I just pulled up Gatesville City County Airport. I have no idea. I've never heard of the place. So that's the tornado watch. I got the wrong one. Okay. Tornado warning until 7:15 p.m. Central Time. So another 6 minutes here. What do we got? Southeastern Coryell County in Central Texas, northwestern Bell County in Central Texas until 7:30. Okay, so that's what that is that. So that's the one tornado warning that we're seeing right now at the moment. But again, very busy and very impressive radar here that we're seeing out of the National Weather Service office in Fort Worth, Dallas. I stand corrected. Man, these boxes. I'd hate to be working in this office in that office having to put out all these warnings like this. I mean, They must have. They have to have multiple people working on this.
Well, they certainly must have templates where it makes it easy enough so that you can put in the cities or towns that are in the path of these things. Certainly, you can't start from scratch and expect to get all this out in a timely manner. So I'm sure they must have something in advance to, just fill in the blanks, so to speak.
Rishi Sharma, Joe, hit super chat tonight, also in a very generous way. Thank you very much. Really most appreciated, and thank you. And I hope that, Rishi, information I sent you regarding the Cape, the Cape values, was helpful. And if you need anything else, just send me a message. Okay. Let's go back to the radar, the big radar. And there's the stuff up in Maine where they have the winter storm warnings up. Is that down east Maine though, Joe? Is that the part of Maine that's called down east Maine?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, so they're still doing it with snow there, so that's going to be pulling out shortly. Meanwhile, the radars are quiet from there south till you get to North Carolina, and you've got some rain across North Carolina, back through Tennessee and North Georgia, and then we get into these, vicious thunderstorm activity that's going on. Also getting some rain and some heavier rain moving through St. Louis right now at 8:11 Eastern Time, and rain's moving into southern Indiana and Illinois. We've got snow up in Idaho and Montana. We've got precip Some snow, some rain moving into Washington and Oregon at the moment. California and Arizona at the moment are quiet.
And on the chat board, quickly doing a little bit of historical look. Somebody said, does anybody remember the intense storm that hit the Northeast on this day? It was Ken Musillo. Does anybody on the chat board remember on this date in 2018, a potent storm that did much damage with wind and flooding in the Northeast? And according to our friend, who does a lot of...
That was the first of the 4 nor'easters.
Correct. Rob Friedowitz points out the day after March in 2018, it was a Friday, came in like a lamb, a fierce... The first day was a lamb. The second day, a fierce nor'easter battered the area. Again, it was on this day 5 years ago. My goodness, 5 years already, Joe. The city was lashed by a wind-driven mix of rain and wet snow that amounted to 2.24 inches. 0.38 inches of it fell last night. And although Manhattan was spared gale force winds, the peak gusts were around 35 miles an hour. Gusts of 50 to 70 miles per hour were common at the 3 major airports. On Long Island, at the Jersey Shore, in southern New England, temperatures were mostly in the mid to upper 30s with wind chills in the upper 20s. Yes, this was the first of the big 4 nor'easters in March of 2018.
I just pulled the map up. There it is, the 970, less than a 974 low right in the box.
Wow.
And there wasn't a whole lot of cold air with that one. But some places did get snow out of it, yes. It was the ones that followed each one that followed produced bigger, higher and higher snow amounts, particularly for Long Island, because the last one, if I remember correctly, was on March 25th, something like that, and Islip got 20 inches out of it. I think I had 22 or 24 at my house. Boy, everybody's loaded today. Kay hitting super chat also in a big way. Quiet John started something here. You should have him on every night. Thank you, Kay. Really, in all seriousness, that's very, very generous of you. Thank you so much for hitting super chat. It is Kay's first super chat. We appreciate it greatly. My God, we've gone now we're going now in the meat, Joe, and now in the meat and fish aisle. We could go from instead of chuck, we could go to sirloin or maybe even porterhouse, or ribeye. Thank you.
Or get a tuna steak. Do you know how much a tuna steak costs?
Yeah.
Or even salmon. Come on, Joe. We're getting up there in years now. We have to make sure to eat healthy now.
No. I eat my salmon. I eat actually quite a bit of salmon. But no, I know it's ridiculous how pricey it is. So I was just rolling back through these maps. This is at 1 a.m. on that Friday, March 2nd, and you see the low forming east of the New Jersey coast and south of Long Island, and then it just sat around all day and exploded.
Right.
Actually, it did a counterclockwise loop. 974 low, and then it started dropping southeastward. The gradient was exceptionally tight with that. So, I do remember that. That was one of those fun. That was one of those fun ones, for sure. And here's the current surface map as we take a look, and of course nothing like that. We had a front go by earlier today. We've got another one that's hanging around. Just north of Lake Ontario, where there's actually, the air here with this high, Joe, it's in the teens and 20s up in on the Canada side of Lake Huron and Lake Superior. This is not any kind of real quality cold air, so you're basically going to do it with whatever you got in those areas, just north and west of New York City and just north and west of I-95 at the start. It won't last long, but there might be enough here. There will be enough here further north in upstate New York and in New England, along and north of I-90. WPC now. the 7-day precip in the Northeast, because there's really after today, although I was looking at today's 18Z run, which I know the rule about the 18Z run and all, but given how volatile the models are, and since they're going to get, it's probably going to be as good as any in terms of trying to figure out what's going to go on down the road. Has some Norland trough coming next Wednesday with 522 thicknesses and some light snow, but we'll get to that in a second. In the meantime, the rainfall here for the coast will be on the order of an inch to an inch and a quarter, but even in upstate New York and in the areas that are going to get snow out of this, WPC is showing inch to inch and a quarter amounts. Again, most of this is front end loaded. Big rains, again, some but not all front end loaded from northeast Texas to southern Indiana on the order of 2 to 3 inches or more. And then, of course, out in the west, we all know it apparently just snows forever out in the west. More hefty precip of several to many inches over the next 7 days. WPC on their snow map, interestingly enough, we were talking about Boston. They actually raised their put Boston was was between 40 and 50% for the probability of 2, and on their update late this afternoon, they pushed them up now to between 70 and 80% for the probability for at least 2. And they actually did 2 things, Joe. They pulled the southern edge of all of this further north, but they also pulled the southern edge of the high probabilities, the 80% probabilities, a bit further south, even into northern Connecticut. So a bit of a squeeze there, with the bigger amounts kind of shift, the higher probability shifting south from north to south, and then at the bottom they kind of pushed them a little bit to the north. I don't force. There's not going to be any surprises on the southern end of this.
No, I don't think so. I'm just amazed. Here's Boston. We're talking about how much they're going to get and whatever like that. And look at New York City. It has been that way all winter long, or mostly all winter long. And I think they're like, only 0.4 of an inch away from tying the winter of 72, 73 for the lack of any snow. And I'm not sure, whether or not they'll be able to do it.
I think they need 0.6.
0.6 of an inch. Yeah. At 0.6 of an inch, it sounds like, trying to ask for just 6 more inches.
Oh, this winter, yes. Yeah. Okay. Look, if it's going to happen, at least the pattern at least is not what the pattern was. So there was almost zero probability of it happening in the pattern that held up for January and February. The probability that we're going to get one more event, I think, is higher now because of the pattern we're going into. It's not. I don't know what number I would assess to it, but I certainly wouldn't say there's no chance that we won't get any additional measurable snow between now and the end of the month.
Well, we'll see. Maybe I was right when I was talking about my poor snowblower. I'm never going to mention that one again. But I said maybe we'll have to wait till April.
Yeah. This is the probability of at least 8. So the 50% line is just north and west of Boston, and then runs pretty much right along I-90 to south of, actually probably a little bit south of Albany, where the probability is up at 50% for at least 8. And you can see in the Adirondacks and in Vermont and New Hampshire, you've got 80 to 90% probabilities there. I'm going to just widen this just so we can go out and look out west. Take a look at what's going on there. So this is the probability for at least 8 in the western part of the United States. So we're talking the Sierra Nevadas, the coastal ranges, or maybe just a little bit further inland into northwestern California, and then, of course, the Cascades. Also in parts of southeastern Idaho, western Wyoming, and northern Utah, some 50% or higher probabilities there. And if we want to look at the probability for at least 2, it's pretty widespread here. A lot of areas. If you're wondering why some of those areas are like 20 or 30% in the green, and then they're surrounded on either side. So those are, it's mountains versus valleys. And a lot of times, there's all sorts of shadows that go on depending on which way the wind is blowing, where some areas have a much greater chance of seeing snow, and then you just go into the valley side and on the downslope side, and you get nothing or far less. So that's what that all is. And there's nothing really too much on there on the long range, so I'm just going to skip that. And let's go to the models, shall we?
Surely.
Okay, so I have the European up, and since we talked about it before, this is what I was getting at. So here's the upper air. This first map is actually early Saturday morning. It's just any spot we start at is as good as any. And we've got this building blocky pattern, this upper high that's pushing from east of Iceland clear across Greenland, and of course that suppresses the jet stream further south, although we still have more of the troughing out in the central and western part of the U.S. and also southeast of Newfoundland, at least early Saturday morning. And then over time, that blockiness moves over Greenland. It's a full-fledged, closed-off, blocked high in the upper atmosphere. You've got a low southeast of Newfoundland. So you got a 50-50 low out there come the middle part of next week. And then as the block weakens, that blocking high weakens, but then there's another one that's up there north of Alaska, and then you get this vortex that forms. Look at this. I mean, you get this vortex that forms out of an upper low that drops down from the northwest into Iowa and then goes up into southeastern Canada and just deepens like an animal. I mean, that's insane if that happens. I mean, you got this cold. I haven't had an opportunity to draw this on the jet stream map in such a long time, since probably back in December. But that's where our flow is going to be coming from. This is the European is right. This is a very cold setup. And as I mentioned earlier, if you look at the temperature at the 5,000 foot level, the zero, okay, it's that light blue. That light blue goes almost all the way down to Miami. I mean, that's how crazy it is.
Crazy indeed. That's but Joe, let's as a disclaimer point out that
it'll be gone the next run. I mean, it'll be different. I don't know if I'd be shocked if it weren't gone the next run. To get the cold air all the way as far south. But even the GFS, though, for the same time frame, although the upper air look is a bit different, it does bring the zero down to northern Florida. It just doesn't have that wholesale plunge the way the European has. Because if you look at the GFS's upper air, it's kind of it's a little bit on the crazy side. Because you got this blocking high, and then it sort of fades. But then you have this 50-50 low out near Newfoundland, and then some kind of arm from that extending westward back to the Great Lakes amplifies off the Jersey coast. You see it there? That upper low? Yeah. I mean, it's really weird. And again, models have a difficult time in the long range as it is. But when you get into a blocking pattern, they really have a difficult time trying to figure out where to take things. So, again, expect a wild ride in the next week to 10 days while we deal with all of this.
And March the 12th, by the way, is the anniversary of the famous blizzard of '88. So that just is proof right there that, yes, you can have unusual, anomalous, certainly, weather patterns that late in the season. And who knows, maybe this year nature will try to commemorate the blizzard of '88 with something unusual. Again, we don't anticipate that it's going to come out exactly the way it's being shown now, or as never take anything at face value on any of the models beyond 5 days. But maybe March the 12th, we will have something most unusual to see and to talk about. But right now, it just I'm not going to say science fiction, but it's going to be difficult to wangle to get something, especially that late in the season. But we'll see.
And David Schwartz on the chat board, he's posting these severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings that are coming out one after another. Thank you, David. That's really actually that's a great thing to do, as it keeps everybody informed of what's going on when it comes to the severe weather when we have it during showtime. Thank you very much for doing that. Okay, let's run through the maps. Here's our storm. This is a really wrapped up low, Joe. It's a 983 low near Little Rock tomorrow morning. I mean, you don't often see. And again, if this were something more like a 95-ish low going into that high, I think we would be talking more about snow further to the south than what we're seeing. It's just too wrapped up a storm, too deep. A 77 low near Evansville. You just usually don't see pressures that deep, but it's kind of a low pressure map as it is, so it's there, and that's what you deal with. Dark blue snow breaks out in those winter storm watch areas that we have in Illinois, Indiana, and in Michigan, and you see it there. And now the low's starting to weaken fairly quickly. This is tomorrow. This is at 1 a.m. on Saturday. So you see the precip moving into New England into that cold air, snow breaking out ahead of it, a little sleet breaking out ahead of it as well, and then of course the tough fight in Boston. The secondary, there it is at 1 a.m. The primary low in Northeast Ohio, and you see all the isobars are bagged toward Chesapeake Bay, Delaware Bay, and then all of a sudden the primary is just about gone 6 hours later, and you have an 87 low just south of Long Island. That's pretty quick secondary development, Joe. Somebody's going to bet, somebody snow-wise in that area in central New England is going to get saved by that secondary developing so quickly and shutting off the warm air.
And the other question is, and I've said this more than a few times, that our models, the short-term models that we rely on, really do not have the ability of picking out mesoscale banding of snow, especially mesoscale banding associated with a rapidly intensifying secondary storm system like the one we're looking at for later tomorrow and tomorrow night. And therein lies the rub for people in central and northern New England as to just exactly how much they're going to receive. If you're underneath one of those rapidly developing bands of snow, you could put down, in a blink of an eye in like an hour, 2, 3, 4 inches. That certainly is a distinct possibility.
Oh, clearly,
especially in places like the Green and White Mountains of Vermont and New Hampshire. So,
oh yeah.
Wow.
Meanwhile, in the West, here comes the next round of energy on Saturday. And that brings the snow. So that's the winter storm warnings that we have up now. So they're up actually a day and a half in advance. And that energy is going to produce those dark blue snows that you see there in California. So it's going to be in feet, although it doesn't extend all the way down into Southern California this go around. It's more northeast and north, and then more energy coming in. Now, back in the east, after this goes out, the air behind the storm is not particularly cold, so we have to wait for another front, and that's going to come on Tuesday. You see that low there in the lakes that moves into western New York and then suddenly reforms southeast of Long Island with some light blue snow there from New York City north and east. I don't know if that's real or not, and if it is, it looks to be on the light side. But then, Joe, what it's doing is it's got this big high that's spreading down. The pressure, you can't, we aren't far enough, the map doesn't go far enough north to see the high, what the highest pressure is, but I see a 1050 isobar, and I see a 1052 millibar isobar. And I even see 1050, 1052. So this is somewhere in the 1054, 1055 range. It's a very big, strong high here. But because of the block and what's going on in the Atlantic, this run of the GFS brings an arm back around late next week. And you see this on Thursday, where it's got this snow in Maine and New Hampshire, Massachusetts that's dropped southward. I'm not going to sit here 186 hours into the future and try to forecast a Norland trough from an ocean storm. Okay, that's a short range problem. Talk to me next Tuesday or Wednesday about this if it's even real. But it does have a very, this is the coldest look outside of the two Arctic outbreaks that we had, Joe. This is the coldest look that we've had on the maps all winter long.
Well, in regard to, talking about the Norland Trough for next week, I know one person who would be willing right now to already give his opinion about that, and that's Mr. Cosgrove.
Oh,
If there's anybody who's the king
of Norland
of the
troughs?
Miller A's and B's and Norland Troughs, everything, it would have to be Larry Cosgrove. So he might be willing to stick his neck out. I know you won't, and I certainly won't about what might happen. All I've got for next Thursday for the Hudson Valley is sun giving way to clouds. I said, let's leave it like that for the moment.
Yeah, it does get pretty cold though. It's a 510 thickness here with the 38 high in Wisconsin next Friday. Let's see what the anomalies look like. The 2-meter temperature anomaly. Yeah, that's all below normal. Boy, we hold on. I'm too far deep. That was the wrong map. That was out a week later. Sorry about that. Tuesday. Okay, so this is Wednesday, and now here's Thursday, and this is Thursday night and Friday. I mean, it's still below normal. And then as we move through time, it's just all this below normal temperatures. And then you get a bigger dump around mid-month that comes down and spreads all through the eastern part of the United States.
Right.
Listen,
and that's what the Climate Prediction Center was talking about. I posted this several days ago, how their forecast for the latter part of March, the last 2 weeks of March, indicating, in a word, cold. And this indeed looks like it's going to come to pass.
Yeah. And whether we get a storm while we have all this this potential cold air around, remains to be seen. I got to think, though, I got to think with the blockiness that's there, and if it's going to last for at least a few weeks, which it seems like that's going to be the case, you would think that something would come out of that. You would think something would come out of that. And it just may not be where you where you live or where I live. By the way, this sort of pattern is not good for me here because I'm going to, we already just about hit 80 degrees here yesterday. If that verifies, particularly if the European verifies, it's going to get cold here in the North Georgia mountains.
Yes. Yeah. It's going to get cold everywhere.
Yes.
And I David Schwartz, I really liked you, but I suddenly have a reason not to like you.
Why? What did he say?
On the chat board, he's talking to Jay's Boston emergency responses, and David Schwartz says,
"No,
I want year-round DST."
He's DST. He's a daylight savings time supporter.
No, one more week of our getting the latest information, Joe, from CP, not Climate Prediction Center, the World Weather people. One more week of getting it before we go back on daylight saving time, and then we have to wait an extra hour. And
yes.
I can't deal with that.
All right. You know what, Joe? It's getting kind of late, and I had a call come in that I have to take. So I think we're going to wrap the show up tonight, and we have a Briller Jeopardy. I have it, so we'll save that for Sunday. Okay.
Okay. All righty.
And on that note, thank you very much. I mean, I don't know, a bunch of you must have hit lottery tickets tonight and shared some of your winnings. Because
to Kay, Risha Sharma, Quiet John, Frank Scalera, Raymond O'Hara, Anthony Sparaccio, which kicked it off tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. 112 likes, which we didn't even mention about the fact that Joe and I like to get over 100 likes, and we got over 100 likes without asking, and that's even better. So thank you for those, and Joe and I will be back Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, so we will see you then. Enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend, and stay safe. Night, everybody.
Nighty-night, folks.